like to call to order the Proctor City Council meeting for Monday, October 6, 2025. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perform a roll call at this time. Councilor Benson?
Present.
Councilor Johnson?
Present.
Councilor DeWall?
Present.
Mayor Ward's also in attendance. Please let the minutes reflect Councilor Peterson is on an excused absence. We also have City Attorney, City Administrator, Administrative Assistant, Finance Director, Police Chief, Darren Lee, correct? Yes. All right, and Phil Larson. Looking for a motion to approve the pre-agenda meeting minutes from Monday, September 15th, 2025.
So, second.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Benson, second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve the City Council meeting minutes from Monday, September 15th, 2025. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve the special City Council meeting minutes from Friday, September 19th, 2025. I'll go ahead and make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Benson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Before making that motion, I'd like to remove 6B from the agenda. And with that correction, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Councilor DeWall made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to comments and suggestions from the citizens present. The public comment and suggestion period of the meeting is when the City Council offers a time for everyone in attendance or watching from home to address the City Council. Once we move on from the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting, members of the public will no longer be allowed to address the Council unless the Mayor acknowledges you. As a general rule, the Council will listen to all comments but are not required to comment on or respond to any comments made by speakers. If you'd like to address City Council during the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting, please come forward to the podium or dial 218-628-6268. Before you begin, please state your name and address for the meeting minutes. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the City Council will be prohibited from using obscene, profane, or threatening language or boisterous conduct that disrupts the meeting or the security of the public. Is there anyone at this time that is interested in participating in the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting? If so, please come forward to the podium or dial 218-628-6268, and we'll give that about a minute. And in the meantime, we will introduce Darren Lee with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. He does have a presentation for tonight's public comment.
Thank you for having me. I've got some additional handouts if I could just pass these out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm Darren Lee with Flaherty and Hood. We represent the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities down at the Capitol, and during the interim between legislative sessions, we like to get out to our member cities and just give you an update about what we've been up to on your behalf down at the Capitol and what we see coming up. So before I get started, I'll just sort of explain what you've got here that I passed out. This is our session report, so it'll go into a little bit more detail than what I'll get into tonight. And then inside, you've got our outcomes chart with different issues that we worked on and what those outcomes were. Upcoming events, our nearest event coming up is in Grand Rapids, our fall conference, and that's our next flyer. So we'd love to have you join us. We have a lot of good speakers and panels. We're going to have something on paid family leave, which I know you'll be dealing with coming up here. And then also our staff contacts. So I work on transportation, but whatever the issue might be, If you have any questions or concerns about any of those issues, those are the staff people that you could get in touch with. And then finally, I'm glad I included this one because it sounds like you're going to be doing some labor negotiations coming up. That's a service we provide. I don't know if you're already using us or who you're using, but you know, some of the things you're talking about with pay grades, job descriptions, comparisons, those sort of things, that's another service that we provide if you're interested in that. So with that, if we could go to the next slide. Just a reminder of who we are. More than 100 cities outside the 7-county metro area. So that's what makes us different from the League of Minnesota Cities is we're just focused on, you know, outside the metro. Most of their members are inside the metro. And then those are some of the issues we work on. Local government aid, I think, was just brought up. I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into this. Annexation, land use, labor employment, environment and economic development. You know, a lot of stuff with bonding, capital investment bills, you know, water projects, wastewater projects, and a lot of local transportation funding is funded through that bill. So I'll talk a little bit about bonding as well. We can go ahead to the next one. So our session recap. So we had sort of a unique situation in the legislature, if you remember all the way back to January. There was sort of a power struggle at the beginning of the session due to one candidate that was ruled as ineligible because he didn't live in his district. And so you had a situation where the Republicans had a temporary 1-vote majority. The Democrats weren't showing up for like the first month. There was a lot of legal wrangling going on. So to make a long story short, eventually there was a special election held in March, and there was a power sharing agreement that they finally came to where they would split committees evenly. There would be co-chairs. They would take turns alternating who had the gavel and who could set the agendas for the meeting. And then Lisa Damath, of course, became speaker. So everything was kind of a 4-way negotiation. The House had to kind of negotiate with itself, whereas normally it'd be like a 3-way negotiation. So it was sort of a unique dynamic. The tasks for the legislative session, our next slide, 2 main ones, pass a 2-year budget and then pass a bonding bill. And I say hopefully on the bonding bill because it's kind of hit or miss whether the legislature the last decade or so does a bonding bill. Usually they do a budget year and then a bonding year. Of course, they haven't stuck to that schedule of every other. So there wasn't a bonding bill in 2024. The last one was 2023. So the one in 2025 would be just kind of like a makeup bill for the previous year. And then on our next slide, here's what our legislative agenda was. Protect LGA, pass a bonding bill, and you can see with all those important projects that what would be included in that kind of a bill. And then EMS funding is a issue we've worked on in the past few years with a lot of our members having ambulance services. So funding for that program. And then zoning and preemption of your zoning authority coming from the state, from some proponents of that. We knew we were gonna have to fight that again this year. So that was our kind of big agenda. So I included this slide because this kind of sort of sets the table for what the legislature was dealing with in the forecast. So you can see that little thin blue line there, 456 million is what they were projected to have in the current biennium, but it's really that second 2-year. They do a 4-year outlook, and so it's that second biennium there with the $6 billion deficit that was really what they were facing. And so that kind of really sort of set the table for what the negotiations were gonna be. So on the next slide, so I got, here's what the governor was proposing. I'll let you read the numbers there, but the interesting thing about his proposal was that it relied on a lot of shifts to counties primarily who administer a lot of the health and human services programs. So that was kind of what his budget hinged on. Going to the next slide, here is where the House and Senate were at. So the House had a little bit deeper cuts than the Senate did that they were proposing. And the interesting thing about this, though, is that the final numbers weren't actually as high as either the House or the Senate. So I think, it's easy to put a top line number on paper, but then when you get into the different subject areas and try to find all those cuts, it gets a little tougher to find the cuts. So I think they ended up cutting about $283 million in the first biennium, but they did have some significant cuts in the second biennium, but they'll still have some work to do to balance the budget going forward. So LGA, the next slide shows kind of what that meant for LGA. So the interesting thing here is that we were not expecting that the Senate Democrats would be the ones to propose LGA cuts. The House tax bill, and the tax bill is where where these numbers are typically kept, is within the tax bill. Walls, no cuts. House, no cuts. Senate tax bill, 20 million in LGA cuts. And then similar cuts, 20 million for county program aid as well. And they also raised significant taxes and had other spending in there. And so we thought, we argued pretty strongly that the cuts were unnecessary and unfair. There was a couple of silly provisions in the bill, like no sales taxes for PGA Golf Tour events if you're going to go to the Ryder Cup. We think that the golf fans that are paying like $900 for tickets to the Ryder Cup can probably afford the sales tax on it, but yet you're cutting aid to our cities, so that's totally unacceptable. And so that's kind of what we made the case to. There's other programs in there too that rise with inflation that continue to see that increase, like the homestead property tax credit, that remained in there, but yet even LGA that doesn't grow with inflation, you're still cutting that. And so those were some of our arguments. And so on the next slide here kind of shows what our activities were. Lobbying Senate staff, rural senators, the action alerts that you might get from us where we ask you, contact your legislator. That helps quite a bit, that they hear from our members. And so luckily, at the end of the day, after our efforts, we were able to avoid that cut, and that was dropped from the final bill. That's something we'll have to look at next year, though, and just make sure that, depending on what the budget forecast is, those cuts could be back on the table. We hope not, but we shall see. So bonding, background on the bonding bill. Like I said, no bill since 2023. This is one area where they have to have 60% of the votes to do borrowing. And so the minority party gets to have a little bit of say in what goes in that bill. There's what the governor was proposing. Since I work on transportation, I was surprised to see there's nothing for local roads and bridges in his proposal, and very little for local projects. And so that was his proposal. And we argued our bonding efforts were sort of a top focus. There's where we held a press conference. We did radio ads, a lot of lobbying on this. Some of our friends in the labor community helped with our efforts on this. And so at the end of the day, the final outcome, I think, was pretty good, all things considered. Money for the Public Facilities Authority, which funds those drinking water and wastewater projects, $176 million. And for local roads and bridges, $62 million. Considering that there's only a $773 million bill. I say only, but some of these bills, like 2 years ago, was $1.5 billion. So, there was nothing for local projects for those local requests, unfortunately. But on the flip side of that, the good news was that there was more money left for some of these other programs. So, housing and zoning. So last year they called it the missing middle bill, and this year it was the yes to homes bill. And so you know, it was kind of the same stuff though, more multifamily housing, mixed residential and commercial, or multifamily and commercial, lower, you know, smaller lot sizes, saying that you can't have parking minimums, aesthetic stuff, like you can't mandate certain materials be used. And so we were really arguing with some of the advocates to resist a lot of these bills. So there was a lot of testimony, a lot of committee hearings. Nothing ever reached the House or Senate floor, fortunately. There's one of our, Craig Clark, one of our city administrators, testifying on some of these bills. But at the end, we were kind of willing to compromise on maybe just the aesthetic stuff, or some of the city groups were willing to compromise on the aesthetic stuff. But at that point, advocates said too little too late. There was a lot of bitterness over the sort of arguments that were going on. And so there's going to be more confrontation on this next year. So looking ahead, lots of uncertainty. There's a little bit more certainty now, I guess, there was the special election for the Melissa Hortman seat, who was tragically assassinated back in June. A Democrat filled that seat, so the House is back to 67-67. But there is going to be a couple of special elections for the Senate. We'll see if that has the impact on the balance of power, but you may end up same 34-33. Governor Walz has said he's running again, so that won't be this November, that'll be next November that he'll be on the ballot. And then there's gonna be construction on the new office building, so it'll be difficult to get in to meet with your House members. And the session starts on February 17th, so we'll see what happens. But I wanted to include once again our events. If you want to come up and lobby with us on Action Day next March, love to have you. And we've already got our summer conference set up for New Ulm, dates set for 2026. So I think I've just got my contact info on the last one. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions. Otherwise, you can get in touch with me anytime. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Council have any questions for Mr. Lee?
Did I see a show the other night on the education station that Minnesota's losing population and losing businesses?
You may have. I don't know. I didn't see that, but that's certainly possible. I don't know what really the population growth is projected to be, but people do make that argument that people will leave the state if we don't provide a business-friendly environment. Certainly, you hear that argument quite a bit.
I know that for people like myself, retired, that the retirement people are not staying in Minnesota.
Yeah, I hear that a lot anecdotally, but I don't know. I don't have the data to back that up necessarily, but I do hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilor Benson?
Yes. So if bonding, some of the other roads, bridges are difficult, what would be an easy legislative item to pass?
Oh, well, the nice thing is, like I said, there wasn't a lot of the local project stuff, and so it was interesting that the governor had nothing in there for local roads and bridges, local road improvement program, local bridge replacement program. It's good that they added that back in. I think the reason they are able to get 60 votes for that bill is because a lot of it was water, wastewater, and roads and bridges, which everybody pretty much agrees that we need to work on and that we need to maintain our infrastructure. There's a lot of it was also like state asset preservation, so state buildings. That was what a lot of the governor had in there. But some of the nice to have things, like maybe a new hockey arena in town, those things are a little tougher to sell, so.
Hermantown got there, so.
Hermantown got a hockey arena?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So with the budget forecast, For the years that I recall, they always predict there's going to be a deficit, and rarely there is a deficit. There always seems to be a business surge. So is that likely, or is this pretty well etched in stone?
Well, you know, if you remember going all the way back to a couple years ago, we had an $18 billion surplus there. And then that turned in from an $18 billion surplus, which was like a historic high, biggest surplus we'd ever had. That turned into a $6 billion deficit in 4 short years. And so they did cut some of that. So they got, I think they still need to cut another 1.9 in the, based on current end of session forecast, but there will be a forecast here coming up in November. So keep an eye out for that. And so they do it every November, then February. So I'll be interested to see what that is, but you know, that can vary based on a lot of things. You know, is the state taking in sales tax revenue? You know, the overall economy, how fast is it growing? That kind of thing. And so I would be totally guessing if I said I knew what the November forecast was going to say, but we'll certainly be looking for that.
Thank you.
Council have any other questions? I got one. How, you mentioned those zoning mandates.
Yeah.
That's going to be another big fight down there this session?
Oh yeah, yeah. So you have a lot of advocates that come from interesting sort of backgrounds. You have people that are worried about the environment, you know, the idea being, you know, increased density is, you know, uses less energy, right? So you'd have the environmental groups there. And then you have sort of racial equality, equity, people that are concerned for that issue. So like, you know, historical injustices based on, you know, zoning being exclusionary or housing being exclusionary. So you have, that's another group. And then you also have developers who want to build houses and, you know, don't necessarily want to go through with cities some of those things. And so the developers want to be able to build whatever they want with whatever materials, you know, put a bunch of tiny houses, sell more houses that way, you know. So if you're a developer, you know, or an apartment building. So that's kind of the group of folks that are pushing it. And then it's really only city groups like us that are opposing it. It's saying, you know, we know that you want development, you want business activity in your city, and it's not zoning that is the problem. There's a lot of things that go into that. You know, you're not trying to keep people out. We know that. So,
So we did a resolution last year opposing that, right? Is that something you'd expect us to do again this coming year, or is one enough?
oh, a resolution? You mean you passed a resolution as your city council?
Yes.
Opposing?
Those, the micromanaging of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would certainly encourage you to do that again.
Do it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Is that
absolutely.
something we could add at a future meeting? Thank you. Thanks. Council have anything else? All right, thank you for your
Thanks a lot.
time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nice work down there. You do well for the smaller cities.
All right. Appreciate that.
All right, moving on, hearing no other comments, so we'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. I'll go ahead and make that motion if there's a second.
Second.
Sent by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 6A, Fire Department hire recommendation. So in your packet, you see the Proctor Fire Department is recommending the hiring of Mr. Devin Whaley. Is there a motion to approve Mr. Whaley's hire?
I will move that we accept the fire department's recommendation.
You heard the motion by Councilor Benson. Any further, or is there a second?
Support.
Support by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 6C, Freiberger Letter to Proctor, Resolution 34-25. So in your packet, there was a letter from Freiberger Law Firm asking the City of Proctor to issuance a private activity revenue refunding bond. for Stella Maris Academy project. Is there a motion to accept Resolution 34-25? Is there a motion to accept Resolution 34-25? Hearing none, item fails for lack of support. Any discussion on that before moving forward?
It could always come back at a later date, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know what timeframes are on it, but if they choose to do that, they are more than welcome to. Any other discussion? Oh, Counselor Benson.
Even though we didn't do a motion, the question was, as far as the administrative fee, have we estimated what that might be? You know, Counselor DeWalt mentioned 1.5%. Is that
0.5%, wasn't it, Counselor?
Half
No.
a percent.
half a percent?
Counselor Dwell, without being asked that ahead of time, I hadn't put any
Okay.
thought into it.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
There's no.
Oh, there's no motion.
Fails.
I'm zoning. That'll bring us to 6D, Baker Tilly classification and compensation study recommendation. Again, there was a pretty lengthy discussion in our pre-agenda meeting regarding this item. I know Councilor DeWall has obtained some more information for further investigation on his numbers. What's council's pleasure on this item? I kind of agree with Councilor DeWall. If council needs time to look at that study a little bit closer, maybe putting this under unfinished business, but I would refer to Administrator Rich on what exactly we're looking for as far as, I mean, are you under tight timeframes on getting this out, or? And like I said earlier, my opinion is, you know, we got 6 positions that are below the minimum. I think one easy adjustment would be to bring everybody up within that min and max range, and then you'd have to negotiate where everybody falls regarding, you know, the compression factor of years of service and all that kind of stuff too. But Councilor DeWall, I think, hit the nail on the head that as long as council is comfortable with the pay range, everything else can be handled during the negotiation aspect of it, I would imagine. As long as we're done in a timely manner for Leslie's budget.
Mayor, might I ask, is pre-agenda meetings and agenda meetings sufficient and the appropriate space for you to ask your questions and make decisions? Or do you need a special meeting or a working session to study the study further?
Council, what would you like to see?
I don't necessarily need a special,
Would it make sense, though, to start a budget session and include this in our first
This-
budget meeting?
this is gonna roll into a budget meeting. I don't think we need to have a special council meeting to discuss this, because this is gonna be more important to discuss when we're looking at our future budget.
But if we got a budget meeting on the calendar, I think that would be a great time to talk about the nuts and bolts of that. But I don't know, are you ready for a budget meeting?
I sent you all a budget.
So you're up to snuff on it all, okay.
I'm ready.
All right. Is that something council would be interested in?
I agree with Administrator Rich for transparency. We should have it during a regular meeting as opposed to a pre-agenda budget working session, extended council meeting, earlier council meeting.
Yeah, we could have a budget meeting prior to our next council meeting. I don't know what I got on my calendar, but
Prior to the pre-agenda, so a 4 o'clock meeting,
that'd be tough.
then go into a pre-agenda, then go to council.
Could we,
Sounds like a long night.
could,
Perhaps an abbreviated pre-agenda meeting.
I don't know, what are your thoughts, or should we just do a separate day on the budget meeting?
The thing that concerns me about a pre-agenda or a meeting before the pre-agenda is you're putting yourself under a time restriction. Everyone starts looking at the clock, and if discussion continues, then you run out of time.
Let's just pick a date on a budget meeting, and we can have all the time in the world to sit and hammer it out.
Can we do that with missing counselor?
Set a meeting?
I know we can do it, but is it, I mean, we want everyone there.
Well, how about this? Why don't we get back to Administrator Rich on dates that are available for everybody for a budget meeting?
I would rather her just pick 4 dates and send it to us, and then we
That
have an
works too.
obligation to respond.
You guys want to get together, pick a day that works for everybody, and then send us a few dates? Does that work with council?
What was that?
Have Finance Director Brent.
Oh, yeah.
Administrator Rich pick a few dates and
Yes.
send us an email with 3 or 4 dates that we can pick from. That work?
Yes, sir.
So what I'm hearing is no action tonight on. Okay.
And where it falls, so we don't lose track of it.
I,
I mean, it could
Do you-
continue to be an agenda item, but technically it's an unfinished item. I'll leave that up to administration to do.
We'll move it under 5, yeah.
do we need a motion to put an item under unfinished business, or does it just automatically fall there?
Just falls there.
Okay. Any other discussion on that then? Hearing none, we'll move on. It brings us to members' concerns. Councilor DeWalt.
I just have one, and I'm just curious. I know I had talked to Megan a couple weeks ago, and this had to do with, what did I ask for again? Was it vacating, or I forget what it's called when you want to get rid of, and I don't know if it's an alleyway or an easement, but I think it's a utility easement. It might be an alleyway.
That's what we're researching right now. We don't know what it is, that particular one that you're asking for. So we're in the middle of researching it. And then in the process of that, there's 2 ways. Well, let's just say, we need to first determine what it is.
Okay. But I mean, I was under the impression that we might have to make some changes on how we approach that.
And we have that all spelled out, but so there's 2 ways you can initiate a vacate. Is one by council, if council feels that it's needed. One issue with that is you need it to pass it by a 4/5 vote. If you don't have 4/5, it doesn't pass. The other way is by adjacent landowner petition. And then in that case, you don't need a 4/5, you just need a majority. And then there's 2 different processes to follow, and that's state statute. That's not really something that we say. What we've been developing is the forms and the sample forms. If someone comes forward and does request a vacate, these are the 2 ways you can do it, and then you leave it in their hands to decide which way they want. Either way, the vacate needs to be for a public good. So for example, we had someone that just came and wanted a vacate because they wanted more yard. And unless they can change the reason why, that in and of itself isn't a public reason to vacate a street or an alleyway.
Well, so does that then run through planning and zoning? And then,
It comes to council.
so there's nothing run through planning and zoning? I thought that's how we did it.
Yeah. It has to be a council decision.
And then what happens when you have something that was given up? You know, in most cases, you have an alleyway, and if it's all agreed that there's no whatever, part of it goes to one landowner, part of it goes to the other. In some situations, it's not like that. It all goes to one landowner because that's where it was taken from originally.
That's not what state statute says. The state statute says it goes half to one and half to the other.
So if city council 30 years ago decided, hey, we want this, whether it's an easement or an alleyway through, we're gonna take it only from the right side, or I'll just say the west side of the property owner, how, and if we ever vacate it, it will go back to you. So that's gonna take a little research to find that information.
If there was an agreement like that in place, yeah, it would take some research.
Because in this situation, that's exactly how it was. And if you look at the land, you can clearly tell that's how it was. Because it's also the end of where zoning was between city R1A versus suburban. So, at any rate, I was just making sure that we're staying on top of that.
And then in that case, I guess I would ask the landowner to give proof. I mean, we can go through our parcel files, but if they know that an agreement like that took place, help from them in researching that would be helpful.
Yeah, some of that dates back to 60s.
And then there's a fee with it too. There's a $400 fee according to our fee schedule, because there would be legal and staff time in a request like
Yeah, I'm
that.
assuming that's just like a variance, whether you get it or not. there's a fee.
Non-refundable, yep.
Okay. So the end result is the process will be clearer here in the future, so that if a resident asks, here's what I'd like to do, tell me what I need
Yep.
to fill out, when do you expect that?
We already have it in place. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, but the one that you're asking about, before we released that information, we wanted to know what we were dealing with the street right-of-way alley utility easement. It was unclear in the records.
Anything more, Counselor? Counselor Johnson?
I have nothing.
Thank you. Counselor Benson?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I got a whole bunch of stuff. Just a reminder, it was on our agenda, but tomorrow is the Minnesota House Capital Investment Committee at Proctor, Spiders Event Center. I believe, 2 o'clock roughly, they're supposed to be showing up. And then that visit will be followed up by a Senate Bonding Committee. We'll be holding their virtual tour on Wednesday, October 15th at 10 a.m. I just want to congratulate Jared Hinks. He was the guy that did the Hoghead events this year, but he also has been honored by the American Red Cross, receiving the Certificate of Extraordinary Personal Action. And then, Councilor Benson, you had an article in your paper this week regarding the DTA, and I think it'd be good if one of us would, and I am more than happy to do it, but talk to City of Duluth councilors and maybe some representatives of the DTA and ask them about keeping our one route we have running through town, continuing to run through town. You know, cities aren't in the business of providing transportation to residents, but if we have a service, that I think we should do our due diligence on trying to keep that service here to provide for our residents. And then thanks to Chief Gaddis, he had a nice article in the Proctor Journal as well that explained a lot of probably what we would have heard tonight, I'm assuming. But that was nice to see kind of what your department's been up to. And then again, Chief Elquist was here earlier, and thanks to the fire department, they've been busy. 161 total calls for third quarter, and 476 for the year. So that's a busy department as well. So it's nice to hear those updates. I kind of like those pre-agenda meetings to get all that info. That is all I have. Administrator Rich?
I have nothing.
Attorney Berta? Leslie, Megan, anyone? Chief Gaddis?
Briefly. Since someone was here earlier, I want to talk about blight. So when WSSD sent out those cards to all our residents, and even I got one, I had the officers go to some of our problem child people in town and hand deliver that to make sure that they got it. Over half of them said the wonderful thing, "Why are you harassing me?" Then the officers explained to them, here's what we're offering, here's what we're trying to sit there and do, and they repealed what they said. They said, oh, I understand what you're trying to sit there and do and help us out. So if they do it and try to clean up their property, we just try to help them out a little bit with that. So we are trying to work on that, you know, in
Nice.
on that sense. Simply, we waited and waited and waited for our pickup truck to get done. That is done, that is complete. The Ford Explorer, Sergeant came in today, he was working on that, installing the brush guard around it, and that should be up and going pretty soon. Just need to get graphics on that. Our newest employee should be done November, late November, with field training, see how that goes, but all in all, that is going well, so. And then calls us a tidbit of information. Our neighbors next to us, he said call volume and stuff like that. Just to let you know, our officers responded to just shy of 1,000 calls less than our neighboring agency did. So yes, we're busy too, and I just sent Mr. Benson our weekly report on what is going on and stuff. And the trends that I see with the warmth and the end of the start of the school year, end of the summer, assaults are going up, and I think that just is just the tide of what's been going on. I see a lot of arrests for assaults and domestics and stuff like that lately. So that's all I have.
Aren't we entering, which month is mental awareness? Isn't that like October, September?
Can't remember.
That, I remember years previous, we kind of associated for a uptick because it's the end of summer. People are having tough times, now got to worry about trying to find shelter, heat, food. Summer's a little easier for them. So just make sure to keep supporting your local food shelf.
And looking at Leslie here, she's helped out too with First Witness, trying to get involved with the school to offer training to the staff and students and people too. So working with her and getting that back there again. So
Nice.
So
Awesome.
I'm not done yet.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. All right, with that being said, we'll entertain a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $208,204.82. I'll go ahead and make that motion. Is there a second? Second. Sent by Counselor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Counselor DeWall made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you.